This episode, which is our second episode, and we do these every week on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern time, is kind of about, the great reset aspects, but really that kind of ties in digital economy, certainly ties in blockchain, it ties in DLT, metaverse, all the aspects that we're dealing with right now. And kind of the overarching thing that we're trying to accomplish with all of these shows that we're doing on a weekly basis is to try to break down as many silos as possible throughout this space. So during this episode, we are happy to have Shayne Higdon, who is the co-founder and CEO of the HBAR Foundation, Rob Allen, a little bit later on, who's the Senior Vice President of Ecosystem Acceleration within the HBAR Foundation. We've got XX Network here. We have, kind of key thought leaders across this space, people that have really done a lot of great interviews. And it's just, actually, we have a giveaway as well through Pixelland that we're going to be facilitating for 2 whitelist spots. So I'll bring Pixelland up here, building out on Hydera. They're launching their numbskulls, which is awesome pixel art, tomorrow morning for the whitelist, and then the main minting is tomorrow afternoon. So Sadaf, I've got Tony up here, Tony Edwards. Tony has been, dude, you are pretty much everywhere interviewing so many people in this space, which is fantastic. I think I even saw that you're interviewing Charles Hoskinson this week at some point. Is that correct?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll be interviewing Charles tomorrow, and appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, dude, 100%. Go ahead, Sadaf.
I'll just say hello to Tony. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Also, Quincy Jones, obviously one of the bigger developers building out on the XDC network, which is a fantastic guest to have up here. Citizen of the Future is one of our contributors within the LightHouse Report. Tokenizer is a contributor within the LightHouse Report. Both of them do such great deep dives and mind maps regarding the space. XX Network, we're happy to have you guys back up here again as well. I did want to start and just kind of maybe around Robin as far as the digital economy, where we're at right now in 2022 versus where you guys see us going. How are these ecosystems really building out? Citizen, I know you did a great breakdown about the UK economy for us this week, and I'm sure you might have some questions for Quincy, because Quincy I saw Quincy, you just put out a new proposal, or his infinite improvement proposal as well. I would love to hear you dig into that. So.
Yeah, hey, thanks for the introduction, and hey everyone, looking forward to this space today. I know there's going to be a lot of great knowledge shared, and yeah, the digitalization of the economy, one of the biggest events in the world, and yet one of the quietest events in the world. The mainstream media just brushed over that, and it's the digitalization of data. We're in the digital data phase of the global economy, so I think that's really exciting to show where we're going, and then interoperability between these decentralized ecosystems and trade jurisdictions is a really exciting concept to research and explore.
Yeah. Tony, I know you interview so many people in this space across multiple different ecosystems. I'm curious, do you see a lot of synergy? Even though people are building out in these individual ecosystems, do you see a lot of synergy as far as what they're trying to accomplish? As far as, I think there's a big misconception. I think a lot of people are really trying to accomplish the same thing. Is that kind of what you're seeing during these interviews that you're facilitating across multiple different networks?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the theme from my perspective and having conversations with these folks is everybody's looking to build a commercial blockchain, and that is allowing consumers and businesses to adopt their solutions. And while it may not be apparent to the consumers, which blockchain, if it's Polygon or XRP Ledger or Ethereum, whatever it is, and they don't know the mechanics of it, it's running and making things more efficient, cheaper, and offering up new services and solutions that they may not have had before. So I think everybody's heads down building. There is obviously some of the tribalism in crypto, but the builders, the devs, and so forth, they're doing their thing. And I think we're seeing just big players making big moves. Obviously, we had BlackRock enter the market, NASDAQ launched their crypto custody. And I've been actually very surprised at the brands like Starbucks, who just launched their NFT collection built on Polygon. And it's going to, the end result is to offer up perks and benefits to users. And those users, once again, may not know that the NFTs are on Polygon or, what's happening behind the scenes, but just that it gets me X and Y and whatever it may be.
100%. And I'd like to, I don't know who's up here from XX Network today. Is it Will or Aaron? Is it you, Will?
Yeah, it's Will.
So, I mean, you guys are deep into, as far as what the digital economy might look like and some of the necessities, especially around privacy aspects. And I know that, it's more so it's not even really just privacy, it's digital sovereignty. It's allowing you to have freedom over yourself, basically, as far as where we're going. Maybe for the crowd down here, and I should say, last week we had XX on about a community expansion initiative. I'm a big fan of just full transparency. After discussing with the XX team, right after we did that podcast last week, the SEC basically went out and tried to tackle a project called Hydro for an airdrop. So I was informed by the team from XX, essentially, that ecosystem expansion initiative is still definitely planned, but it needs to be facilitated in the right way within regulatory clarity, so that there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes right now to still facilitate that. But I did want to make sure that I made everybody aware that was here last week. Still in the works, certainly, right, Will? But just trying to iron out everything to make sure everything's going to be done correctly in a safe way, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's so unfortunate. Obviously, we're in the absence of clear regulatory guidance and clarity, we're all playing a little bit of reaction ball here. But yeah, everything's still on track to build out an initiative that will help grow our community and help introduce like new people within the space to the community. But yeah, we just need to be a little more careful given this most recent SEC move, and we'll be back with more news soon on the best way forward.
I mean, within like all of these ecosystems, we kind of see foundational building blocks. You can build a house like the dev from Genfinity always says famously within our team. You can build a house of cards as high as you want to build it, but if the infrastructure isn't there, it's just going to tumble, right? So from XX's purview, can you talk a little bit about the history, where XX is at right now, and really this is framed around the digital economy. What aspects of XX network and the ecosystem do you see playing a role within that digital economy as we get there 2, 3, 4, really in perpetuity moving down the line?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, and it is in the context of the quote unquote Great Reset, which I think started trending back during COVID. But the roots of it I think go much farther back, and it started. I wouldn't say it started, but we saw it as far back as the original Satoshi white paper, and then even as far back as my co-founder David Chom. He wrote his Scientific American article back in I think 1992. Really highlighting the issue as before the internet was actually called the internet, actually. But he identified and highlighted this issue that we as users of this emerging thing called the internet were actually at a huge disadvantage, both socially and economically, to large corporations and even governments. And there was a huge lack of parity in our ability to control our data and to control access or control the ability of these platforms that we're visiting on the internet to leverage that data, and especially with kind of like the advent of artificial intelligence, start manipulating that data and even society. And so back in the early 90s, he started developing a whole suite of privacy tools and cryptography. He invented the first digital currency. And all of it was centered around this idea that you should be in control of your data. You should be able to control how much of that data platforms access. And even as far as currency goes, the ability to transfer value, you should be able to hold the keys to your wallet, to your money, and it shouldn't be censorable or limited by governments or large corporations. So he started that work, in the late 80s, early 90s, and that's kind of been the DNA of the XX network and what we're trying to do, which is leverage some of his original work with some of his newer work to provide that foundation, which is complete privacy of you as an individual, the data that you leak to all of the platforms online that you interact with, complete quantum security for all of your transactions online, so that you have real security moving into the future, and making sure that everything is as efficient and scalable so that it can be easily adopted. And we're trying to form all that as like a core infrastructure. And we're focusing a lot on on some of the I guess less talked about areas of Web 2 that that haven't been as frequently tackled by the Web3 space, which is, uncensorable social media. But we are looking at CBDCs, ensuring that, with the advent of CBDCs and the renewed interest, that we make sure that there's privacy inherent to CBDCs. Otherwise, we're kind of taking a huge step backward in adopting them. So yeah, that's kind of like a broad strokes overview of everything we're focused on. We're really trying to bring and leverage, private cryptography, quantum secure cryptography, all in an easy to leverage package, and we're trying to make sure that it's integrated into as many new segments of Web3 as possible. So that we're happy to work with a bunch of other chains. They can all route their transactions through the XX network and gain metadata protection, quantum secure privacy to all their transactions. And then we're working, like I said, on social media. We're launching a new app here in the next week, I think. So keep an eye on us for that. And I think that's a big thing, right? If we saw the recent back and forth between Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk, and they kind of said it. They realized that decentralization is kind of going to be valuable and maybe even necessary for these social communication platforms moving forward. So we're just trying to be in the center of that and make sure it's done in a way that really protects the users.
If you guys have any questions for XX or anybody down in the chat,
yes, I
please
have a
feel free to
question.
drop in. Yeah, I brought up
Yes,
I brought up Ahmed. Yeah, go ahead, man.
yes, I have a
Go ahead.
question regarding the wave of BTC. How much wave it takes to move upside? Hello.
Yep, I can hear you. I don't think I understand.
My
Understood
question
your
was,
question. Can you repeat it?
my question is that how much wave BTC take to move up?
How much will what take to move up?
Wave. How much wave it take to move upside?
Oh, yeah. I mean, as far as price action, I mean, that's why we're having kind of the discussion. It's got to float around, all of these projects kind of building out network of network type aspects. And it's going to take time. Like, I don't know if I'm directly going to get into price action within this. We can probably have that for a different discussion. But it takes out all these networks continuing to innovate, continuing to build real solutions, real use cases for real problems. And build on top of that, it's going to be about synergy between, different chains. Building out that interoperability aspect, I think, is going to be gigantic. Death, I'm going to get to you in 1 second, but because whenever Will was speaking from XX, he mentioned kind of custodying what you are actually doing within this space. And I wanted to ask Quincy, who is certainly, and I thank you so much for joining, Quincy, building out so much awesome stuff on the XTC network. I saw that you put out a Zinfin improvement proposal about owning and sharing ownership of the decentralized applications that are built out. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So in my proposal, I actually propose a means of being able to tokenize dApps and then being able to take incoming revenue coming in from those dApps and distribute that revenue amongst a set of token holders as a set of shares. So you could essentially hold a piece of a dApp similar to how you hold a piece of a company and essentially get the incoming revenue or portion of the incoming revenue and proportional to the share coming in based off of the activity of the dApp. So the general idea essentially is being able to, and it's essentially an NFT. With NFTs, you can tokenize anything. You can tokenize any type of object. You can recognize any type of item. And I essentially wanted to recognize the dApp itself as an item and then give it the function of being able to issue dividends based off the performance. One, as a means of being able to issue funds efficiently. Because typically, if you get into like Solidity programming, you'll see what's known as like an owner's address. Essentially, created a more advanced version of that with the token, and it allows for the tokens to be able to get the incoming funds, but also allow for a means for developers to build applications and be able to build tangible value off of incoming revenue, but also be able to sell them to create further applications or improvement on their previous applications. And I mean, anybody could really build out further amendments to any application to further the overarching value in the app. But the general idea is being able to tokenize the app.
So, I mean, it really deals down in not only empowering, the community as far as that proposal is concerned, but also empowering the developers to, feel like what they're building out. There's something there besides putting in thousands of lines of code right at the end game. It's just about increased efficiency and ways for people to empower themselves in this space, right?
Exactly. And there's two big things with that too. So one of the big things, and this is sort of like my entire philosophy in sort of finance in a sense, is these applications are comparable to like startups and such. And these startups are really comparable to any like traditional company, I guess you could say, outside of their application operates like on the App Store, and then they have a company to justify running whatever aspect of running it, where these applications will run on the blockchain and have an interface through an App Store. And technically anybody can interface with a blockchain application, but you might have the primary interface and then a collection of secondary interfaces. But it gives two big things to the developer. One, it allows them to be able to build applications that it gives us a lower barrier of entry to be able to build a application that's worth selling, and that application can justify its value based off of incoming revenue. So because you have incoming revenue, sort of in the same way to how companies that issue dividends would have incoming revenue, and then they would issue their dividends like quarterly, let's say. They could justify the value of their company partially based off that. So it's the same sort of idea here, but doing it live on the network as engagements happening within the application. So let's say you had an application that was like a marketplace or whatever, right? And you tokenize this marketplace to have like 1,000 shares or whatever. And let's say you had a 2% fee on the transactions. Well, anybody who held any amount of those shares would get a percentage of all the fees coming through the application, and that would incentivize them to build more functionality to the application to acquire more fees, or be able to sell portions of the application at some justified price based off the incoming revenue to be able to build either off of that continuous application or build new applications. So it almost like scales liquidity in a sense to developers to be able to sell their revenue generating applications in a multitude of different ways, because that's sort of not a thing right now. In order to sell software, you sort of have to like find someone willing to buy it. But if you have software generating revenue based off of user engagement on the blockchain, it's justifying its value based off of that incoming revenue. So it's sort of how the valuation of companies would be judged based off of incoming revenue for them, similar scaled down to dApps. And because these dApps operate decentrally, the overarching cost to host them is essentially nil. And the incoming profits, like you have a profit margin of like 99% essentially, minus the transaction fee on the network. So it creates a whole new dynamic for how startup-like applications on the blockchain can operate, and how developers can build on them, scale them, and sell them, and how the tokens will justify their own value based off of the incoming revenue of the application that was built.
Yeah, that's huge, dude. Death, I know that you had your hand raised. Go ahead, Death Ranger. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. We're kind of past it though. Now it was the question for the XX network though. I have to say though, Quincy, that what you just proposed is probably the smartest and closest thing to an actual DAO that I've actually heard anybody propose so far.
Yeah, it's sort of like a DAO, like a very, very basic, like let's say we wanted to create a Clubhouse DAO with like me and like 10 of my friends, and let's say we did things in this DAO, like we're like a bunch of trader bros, sort of like how like, you know, we go on Reddit and find cool trades to make. And let's say we wrote a smart contract that allowed us to distribute the dividends based off those tokens. The function of the contract is to like make trades on a DEX, and then we like vote to make trades, and then it makes trades and then distributes. You could like, that's a very basic DAO right there, sort of in the idea of how people see DAOs. And the whole idea is it's not really meant for one thing. It's sort of a tool that can be many things. So it can be something as simple as like we could put together a lemonade stand and split it 3 ways, and you could create 3 tokens and each person gets 1. You can create 30 tokens and each person gets 10. You can create whatever. And you could have a simple means of being able to take in revenue and then split it, just a simple accounting means of doing that. Or you could have it be like a complex social media application that has multiple streams of revenue based off multiple engagement points, and has a huge user base or whatever, and tons of stakeholders that were partially involved, developers, investors, blah, 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 whatever. It could scale to whatever. It could scale from a minor project that was simply an idea and was coded in a night to like the next like $1 billion companies in a sense. That sort of was the idea.
Hi, Moon Chaser. Thank you for joining us. Tony, I saw this might have been like 3 or 4 weeks or a little bit over a month ago, but I know that you've created NFTs as well, correct? Can you tell us a little bit about that, like what that experience was, where you launched them, why you launched them on that network, and what you're trying to facilitate with them?
Oh, sure. Actually, I haven't launched them yet. I did a preview video, so it's in the works. I'm actually planning to launch them on the XRP Ledger once XLS 20 is rolled out. And I have not done anything with NFTs in the past, so certainly a learning process and being able to have that notch on my belt that I created an NFT and I went through the process and I know what to expect and so forth. The goal is to reward folks who are part of my community, if you want to call it that, and they will get special perks. So like being able to book time with me and other things that I'm currently fleshing out. So the artist is currently still working on some of the collection. I have some ready and I will mint them on the XRP ledger once XLS 20 is rolled out. I do plan to do other collections on other blockchains. I would love to test it on Cardano and Algorand and so forth. So part of it is just the exploratory process of learning and then, of course, finding ways to reward my followers.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge disconnect right now because, like, I know some people have Patreons. Like, I have a Patreon, and what gets pretty much undercut from people that are trying to create content is absolutely insane. So I think that there's so many different aspects. One thing, I know Ahmed came up here, and this is really for anybody. Like, anybody that wants to come up and ask a legitimate question is fine. We have definitely Shayne and Rob from the HBAR Foundation coming up in like a half hour or so. And XX was up here if you guys want to come back up, certainly. But it's going to be really interesting to watch what happens as far as value is concerned once we have regulatory clarity. And I guess I would like to ask, like, all the panel up here, because it kind of deals with what Ahmed was asking before, like, how much value do you really think is going to be flowing through distributed ledger technology, DLT, crypto, digital assets, like, over the next few years? I forget who mentioned it early on. BlackRock, essentially that ETF, I think that was you, Tony, just announced like a 25-75 split for an ETF, which gains access to blockchain company. And Bank for International Settlements just put out that document that I think moves 1 or 2% recommended with crypto holdings for banks up to like 5%. So I'm curious with the panelists up here, like, what do we really think is going to be occurring as how much value starts flowing through digital assets and what that represents?
I guess it.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I guess it depends on how you define value, because there's the typical idea of money moving through the networks. Then there's the idea of debt moving through the networks. Then there's the value of data and the value of what purchasing that data may be. Then there's the value of the engagement of those networks. So it's an interesting question to sort of like pose. But to try to answer it, I guess you could say, is everything. And the reason why I say that is anything of value that needs to be shared between multiple parties is going to reside on one of these networks. Anything that doesn't need to be shared between multiple parties will probably be held on mostly private networks. But the reason why you'd host whatever application, whatever data, whatever asset on these networks to begin with, the reason why you do that is it's sort of like a liquidity question. It's like an infinite liquidity. In theory, if all of these networks were acting at maximum capacity, were acting in the way that in the most efficient means for as many applications as possible to be operating on them, you would have the maximum amount of parties and partners that you could possibly engage with at any given time for any given thing. Whether it's an asset, whether it's an item, whether it's because like this could be keeping track of supply chain items to keeping track of global exchange occurrences or whatever. But in theory, you would have the maximum amount of liquidity among participants that have access to the network. So in theory, everything. But it's how do you calculate that? That's a real question. Oh yeah.
So I was going to say, and the impossible calculation of the exponential growth of humanity and the increase in debt and all
that too. It's like you're also trying to see how big it would be, but also how fast it would grow in terms of operating it more efficiently. So it's like this weird, like, moving measuring tape that you have.
Yeah, there's also, and I'll share this news from earlier today, Hamilton Lane, which has just over $832 billion of assets under management. They just announced they're going to tokenize 3 of their funds on the blockchain, and they're going to do that through Securitize. So we're going to see all types of assets on the blockchain. And to Quincy's point, man, it's going to be like everything. It's getting there, but how do you calculate it? Because there's going to be your hard assets that are on there, real estate and all that jazz. But network effect, Metcalfe's law, right? And there's value there, perceived value, all that. So it's interesting, but I think everything's going to be in a blockchain. We're going to have atomic settlement, interoperability, and so forth. I'm excited for it, but the CBDC privacy part is what worries me.
Actually,
that's why I'm curious if Will is still down there. If you could talk about the privacy aspects, but I mean, there's so much integration in this space. I mean, we saw Atma.io hundreds of thousands of assets essentially potentially utilizing the Hedera network, and they just partnered with SAP through Avery Dennison. Like this was like a couple of hours ago, right before I started this, and it's just insane to watch how much integration is really occurring in this space, because how do you really measure when everything's going to be moving towards kind of this new digital system is really the question. War Turtle and Tyler, I know you guys came up to speak, so feel free to speak, guys.
Yo, how's it going, everybody? So I had a question on for Quincy when he was talking about basically using an NFT, I guess it's like using it as a holder for shareholdings or paying out dividends, right? For within, like, if you decide to build out a company with your NFT. So I guess two questions is like, would that make the NFT a security? And I mean, not saying that that's a bad thing, like stocks are securities and people buy them all the time. But would that make the NFT a security? And then, like, would we have to register that? And if we know how to even do that yet?
It depends. So I've actually thought like really long and hard on this, and I sort of found an answer. I mean, it obviously just depends at like what bureaucratic legislator does sometime in the future from now. But the general idea is it depends. Now, this software are just tools. So of course you could very easily make this a security and make these tokens a derivative of your company, and do whatever you need to do to register your company. It just acts as a tool. Now, for it not to be a security, I guess that's the interesting part, would be that there would have to be some separation between. So after the code's written, this is where things get really dicey. So let's say you write the code, everything, 500 lines of code, crazy application, gonna be the next Facebook, whatever, right? Once you've launched the application, and this is where things get really, really difficult, that code is on the blockchain operating entirely autonomously. So it doesn't need any third-party intervention in order to operate. But in order for someone to engage with it effectively, they need to use an interface, like an iOS app or a mobile app or a website or something to interface with it. If you could successfully build your community to have a decentralized means of having different interfaces interact with the application, and have a clear-cut separation in the distinction between you, the developer, other developers also building on the network, and the I guess you could say the DApp, and an effective distribution means of distributing the token. And I believe the token needs to be distributed amongst everyone who is involved in the project. So you don't want to sell the token, and you don't want to just give it away. You have to make sure, even if you have people as beta testers, they can now count to where you can just give them tokens. The reason for that is there's a whole thing with like securities where if you're able to dodge all of that and be perfectly separated from the DApp as an entity, you should be fine. But the problem is if you slip something up and then it becomes a question of, oh, well, I saw that you gave these tokens to this person, or you just did an outright sale with somebody or whatever it may be. But the biggest thing is if you can create a clear distinction between the decentralized application operating on the blockchain autonomously and the interfaces that interact with it. And this could just be like an iOS app or whatever. Because if you're the only one, if you created the application and you're the only one, then the argument comes into play that are your efforts directly impacting the asset's ability to make money? The answer would be yes, because you're an interface, you're the only interface. But if you launched and there were like 7 interfaces and people were using different interfaces, whether it's a different app, whether it's a different website, whatever, then you can come into the argument of, well, my interface isn't the one that's directly contributing to its value because it's one of many. People don't have to use mine. And that's sort of the question that you're going to have to argue, but that's sort of the best argument you got. But I don't think it's impossible. I think it's just a new thing. So something needs to be put into definition for how these things are properly, because I think the biggest thing is as long as you don't sell your tokens, that's the key thing. But it's all new. So we'll see.
I think it's also in how much people are using the application that's built out, right? And if you distribute based on usage of something that's already built, it's a much different animal, right? We really haven't seen that yet because a lot of these things get launched and nobody's used it. It's a mechanism for fundraising over top of like real utility usage of something that's being built. So
yeah, that's that is key. Is how are you going to get that use, and how is that use going to be treated? But I don't think it's impossible, and I don't think it's actually that big a deal. It's really about how you go about things. Because in theory, and it sounds goofy to say it this way, but if someone wanted to Satoshi this, right, and then just drop the code online anonymously, and then other people came in, then no one can say anything because then the first interface had nothing to do with the original code. So it can't be security because he did nothing with it, and whoever created the first one. And I don't think that's like a real defense or whatever. I think that's sort of like a joke idea that people could try, but it's something that is potentially like an option. Just drop things anonymously and have like the communities take them from there or whatever.
Yeah, I'm curious, XX, because Tony had, and I'm sure Tony would potentially love to interview you guys at some point with David Shaw and everything else that you guys had been facilitating with Elixir and then moving towards XX down the road. I mean, it's a great, he does fantastic work in his interviews. But his questions surrounding concerns around privacy and central bank digital currencies, can you guys touch on that a little bit? Like, because I know we've talked about it, about the digital cash aspect, where if a CBDC doesn't represent privacy initiatives in a way that digital cash or the cash works right now, there's a concern. So love to hear your take on it for sure.
Hey, Ryan. Actually, I took over. This is Aaron. If you were wondering where I was, I took over for Will. Let's see, he had to jump out here. So hopefully you can hear me okay now that I took over the account.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess I'd have to address this at a little bit of a different angle, but you know, I work in the marketing communication side of XX Network on behalf of the foundation. Just, as an aside, I grew up from just like the grassroots of this, I would call a movement for privacy technology that actually works. I started off just researching Chom in the past, and found out he was doing this for several years now, like actually as far back as like late 2017, early 2018. And, he's always been about trying to create systems, or at least bolster systems, that allow people to have privacy and data security. And, I was listening to Will, and he was touching on some of that from the past. Ryan, that we can't really say like specifics about what's going on, but the reality is David has already written several papers, one in particular, in a working group with Swiss Bank, just because he has so many connections around the world. There's like people from the European Union asking him, how do we do this? He has a lot of friends in high places, so to speak, right? Because he's been in the game for like, I don't know, 30, 40 years, right? So, and he already went through this one go around with DigiCash. So it was just ahead of its time. And now, he's trying to help these guys get their crap together, so to speak, like in simple terms, and showing them that if they want to, they can create privacy and anonymity for digital currencies, essentially creating cash of the digital type, right? So, even he, in lots of different interviews, has coined the XX network as, the eCash 2.0, going back to his original currency that he created. And in his most recent, I would say, technical paper, which was actually him and Christian Grothoff and Thomas Moser, they did the working paper for the Swiss National Bank. And that's been out since last year, like early last year. So anybody can go and have a look and actually see technically how it can be done. And, although like we can't get into details about any dealings that we have with specific banks, the information's out there. A lot of people are scared, and, rightly so, that a lot of countries do not have the best interest of its people in mind, right?
Well,
They're just
even
trying
look
to
at
mine our own data.
the Fed Reserve Chair Powell, like what was it, like September 27th, put out that kind of thought piece about a U.S. central bank digital currency, and saying that it's going to be privacy protected, but also identity verified, and therefore not anonymous, which I think it raises concerns around, I don't want to get tinfoil hatty here, but, social credit scoring and things like that, and what that would potentially look like.
Yeah, again, we can create the tools to allow for these things, but are they going to implement it? Well, that's up to the governments themselves, right? So, Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other story. Like you said, it's like I don't want to get tinfoil hatty, but I mean, people can come up with all kinds of reasons as to why people in the government are stalling on a lot of this stuff. I mean, I personally just think that they're trying to learn about it, and a lot of these people, they just don't know anything. So they're putting together teams of people and getting resources together, and unfortunately, the U.S. is way behind, as everybody knows. So, being that they're still, the world reserve currency, they have the most to lose if this goes sideways. So, I mean, they're expending as much pressure as they can on everybody.
Yeah. I want to open up to
Yeah.
the panel because Aaron, like,
Yeah, do that.
I posted it out like this was like a week ago, and I think, and I see you down there, Tyler. Definitely come up in 1 second. But I just before I lose track of this, there was a document that came out, and I forget who it was from. And there's been such, and I guess this is for everybody. This is Tony, Moonchaser, Citizen, XX, Tokenizer, Quincy, Creamies, like anybody that's been in the space. There's been such a shift in the news that we were seeing in 2017, 2018 from the banking purview and like the legacy financial infrastructure purview to what we're seeing now, to the extent where what came out about a week ago was saying that 95%, and this is represented by central banks globally, 95% of the world, the entire world's GDP, is exploring or building out proof of concepts with central bank digital currency. And if I guess my question to everybody up here is, would we have ever seen that type of information or news like 2 or 3 years ago? There's no way in hell. So it's very easy to see where we're going, right?
Yeah, it's amazing how fast things have moved, even though it's been 4 or 5 years. And one item that makes me bullish is that as these governments roll out their CBDCs, they're going to have to educate the masses. What is this? What does it run on? And why is it important? And so on and so forth. And I think it will break down that trust barrier that people may have, with blockchains and crypto. They may still be skeptics, but if the government is endorsing it, and we know some of these CBDCs will exist on these commercial blockchains that are out there, I'm bullish on that, but the privacy concern is still an issue, and I know that's still an item that's being debated. I've spoken to Chris Giancarlo of the Digital Dollar Project many times, and the question I keep asking him every time is, will this align with the U.S. Constitution and our right to privacy? And I think we still don't have a clear answer on that. And I see members of Congress, like Congressman Tom Emmer and so forth, have been pushing to have the Fed not issue wallets so they can send CBDCs directly to people. Or the digital dollar, I should say, and also that it should be private. But look, I think we don't have a clear answer yet, and hopefully they get it right. And I am, while it may not happen in the immediate, but for my kids' generation, will they be living that social credit system scenario where their political speech, freedom of speech, all that stuff will be challenged and economically.
Tyler, I know you had a question. Feel free, dude. Go ahead.
Hi guys, amazing summary. Thank you for this space. I have only one question about education and how it's going to be connected or in a better way entangled quantumly. How can I connect let's say I want to connect to entangle a education system based on sacred geometry, software frequencies, beautiful things, beautiful people like you that perfectly understand. And how can I connect this new education system to all the blockchains? That will be my question. Thank you.
I think the question was, how do we deal with educational aspects in this space, which is certainly a very interesting question because, everybody that's in crypto DLT, we're all a little bit degens, right? We're all a little bit like wild animals as far as human beings are. We are. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But a lot of us trying to educate, understand that unless you're providing like quote unquote hype content or just entertaining, or it has, like, if it's coming from a financial purview, like, how do you educate people in a way? And I don't know, like my biggest concern, I guess, I don't have the answer for that. I think all I can do is what I've continuously tried to do, which is make mistakes, but also try to provide value and do it from my own, stance. But the real question is like, or the real concern I have, and I guess I would open this up to everybody to talk about is, you know, is it going to come too late, just like every other technological revolution that's ever occurred, where most people don't want to educate themselves until they're already using it? Is that the way that we see this going? Or is there a way to potentially try to do it, where we're reaching out and maybe it's just one individual at a time, but yeah, Moon, go ahead.
No, hi everyone. I just think first of all, it's great that Genfinity is hosting all these spaces. But with regards to CBDCs, I believe the issue is that there's a lot of disdain and mistrust with regards to CBDCs. It's just only because how we view governments, I guess. But the thing is that I believe that it is inevitable and it is happening. It's just a matter of countries picking the technology, governance and policies to implement the CBDCs. But for example, recently, I think a day or two ago, the EU Commission, they announced that they would be proposing legislation for the digital euro. And this is going to be planned to be issued in 2023. So different countries, different regions implementing or are investigating CBDCs, and they're just at different stages of development, I guess. So yeah, I think it's something that's going to be happening. And it's something else that we should be aware of is that CBDCs come in two forms. One is the domestic one or the retail one. And the other one is the multiple CBDCs, I guess, what the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS, that's the one that we would be concerned with, because that's the one that involves cross-border payments. So yeah, I do think it's happening. It's going to be happening sooner than we think.
And I think the ESMA, and I don't know if you probably saw this, Citizen or Matthew LNY or Tokenizer, European Securities and Markets Authority. This is probably a day or two ago. From what I saw, they've approved the markets and crypto assets regulation. There was a vote, I think, that had already occurred. Did you guys see that, Citizen and Tokenizer? That was like maybe a day or two ago.
Yeah, I got.
I didn't. I missed that. No, I didn't see that. So I'll have to look into that. That's sweet.
So I mean, all this stuff is certainly like 1,000,000% coming. It's just how it flushes out. And again, these discussions up on this panel, like for me, really the big thing that we're trying to that needs to be facilitated might hopefully are people joining spaces and learning where it's not just about hey, buy this X, Y, and Z, do whatever. But it's about kind of breaking down silos within communities, even from a gamification standpoint, because that's certainly going to be a part of the digital economy. Like I said before, we've got Pixelland that thankfully doing a giveaway and trying to help us out with these spaces for numbskulls, and we have 2 Ethereum projects. So Pixelland's Hedera. We've got 2 Ethereum projects that I would love to come up and talk. One is Undead Blocks, the other one is Big Time. It's really about just breaking, like, and I know Dirk's down there in the crowd from the XRP Ledger. It's trying to like infiltrate might be a shitty word. It's trying to infiltrate, into different communities, because once you start reaching out to these community builders in different ecosystems, they're all doing the same thing. They're just trying to do it from the tool set that they have within their networks. I'll let Big Time come up. Anybody else that wants to touch on that, I mean, that would be fantastic. And I know, Tony, like I asked you before, like, I'm sure you've seen this where everybody's trying to provide so much value from an ecosystem, but how do we get to the network of networks type aspect? And even with CBDCs, with like something like XX, like if you have a layer 1 that can be, and I know this is a big Hedera push where there's different tool sets. You've got consensus, token, and smart contract services. There's ways to build out network of network aspects within this space in a way that you plug and play over time when the tool sets exist to make everybody's ecosystem and everybody's game or everybody's financial constructs that they're building out as efficient as possible. But it's just going to take time to get there, and the only way we get there is by starting to break down the silos and creating synergy within community, project builders, and people in general. So,
Well, I'll step down, but I do think on the CBDC and the BIS stuff, that's where things are going. Obviously, it's going to take a while. But regarding the education stuff, I actually think these spaces and the engagement are good. I think engagement is learning. I mean, right, there's a reason you send kids to school, because they get engaged and they go learn. So I think these spaces are a pretty good tool.
Yeah, Karma, if you could do me a favor, and this is for anybody up here, Tony, if you wouldn't mind, your interview with Charles Hoskinson, if you have the link, if you want to pin it up here, that'd be great. XX, if you want to pin anything. Karma, if you want to pin anything about Ledger Scale up here, fantastic. Creamies, if you guys have stuff going on, like this is kind of what this is all about. Sadaf on the back end, if if we want to pin our next show Wednesday at 5 p.m., we should be doing that too. Like, again, it's an open forum for you to come up and talk. Big Time's down here requesting. I definitely want to get Big Time up here, and in about 5 minutes, I do believe that we have Rob Allen, Shayne Higdon from the HBAR Foundation coming up. Hopefully, we can shed some light on what's going on in that ecosystem. I'd love to keep up some of the panel up here. Quincy from XTC, XX, Tony, as many people as we possibly can to have these conversations really flow. So Tokenizer's trying to come back up too. So
Yeah, I'll step down. Give me a second. And hold on. Okay, here we go.
Solomon, I just want to address that education thing real fast. And I think everyone in this space, basically, you are an educator. You're trying to do your best to talk to your ecosystem that you're around. But I have a small little company, and the problem that I'm seeing is no one really cares about the technology. They're only concerned about how to make money in the space. So I think that would be a little bit of an insight until I guess people are, or their money is at risk. Will they then turn on and look to see, what's really happening with the blockchain?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I mean, that's kind of the concern that always exists, right? How do you educate people in a way right now where you get them out of their, because this is a problem that exists across, that has existed in this space since the inception of Bitcoin. How do you tell people about something that is coming in a way that is not taboo and they don't feel uncomfortable about learning more about where money really goes? And most people are uncomfortable if you start bringing up money in a normal conversation, even with family and friends, like where you're like, hey, I know that this is happening. I know that these integrations exist and it's coming. How do you break them out of that, like that dollar, that dollar thought process cycle where you just tell them it's just, fiat historically has not lasted. Like how do you tell them in a way that they need to know that it's coming? I mean, shit, my mother-in-law asked me 2 months ago, and I've been trying to tell her about crypto for 3 or 4 years, where I'm mining my Coinbase. And it's like, I'm not mining my Coinbase. It's just an exchange. So
yeah, recently Cointelegraph just came out with a top 20 schools of blockchain, but I could tell you right now, it's not in the education part of, I guess you say, the K through 12 in America. We haven't even gone there. And what again, we could start after school programs and stuff like that, but it's getting the kids involved. And I think having apps and TikToks, and I think that might be an infiltration where, but the NFTs was a groundbreaker. I actually had kids come to me, hey, Mr. Mariano, I heard you're in crypto, about NFTs, and that would be a way that I could talk to a bunch of kids. So I think having an NFT collection, obviously that was, and in video games, that's how you're going to get these kids educated on what's going on with the blockchain.
I'm going to get up, Undead. I know you have your hands up, or hand up. I'm going to get you up in 1 sec. Big Time, I'm going to get you up in 1 second too. I want to end the education, or at least this portion of it, by saying, they're not dealing with this in K through 12. And I know that because my daughter came home like a year or 2 years ago, and she was probably in 6th or 7th grade. And she said they were teaching her about finance. And she said, the school was telling me why it's important to save. And they told her, that when you become an adult and you deposit money into a bank account, they lock up those dollars into a vault. And I told my daughter, I'm like, I'd love to see this vault, because the vault doesn't exist, right? So yeah, undead blocks. This is kind of what it's all about. And I know we got to get Shayne and Rob up here, but even within digital economy, great reset type aspects, I mean, gamification is going to play a huge role as far as where we go, and breaking down these silos. Undead is building out on Ethereum. Big Time is as well. And I asked Undead, I asked you to come up like a half hour ago. I'm like, dude, come up. And you're like, I'm just trying to take in as much knowledge as possible. So what's up, dude? Thanks for coming up, man.
Yeah, appreciate you having us. I'm here because I think it's going to be with the children also, and through gaming. At least I think all of us here at Wagyu Games does. There's many others that feel the same way, probably big time also. Uh, Biggest thing, we're building a youth group. We had these children out at like CoinDesk interviewing people, Kayvon, a couple others. We've got a group of almost 70 kids, might even be a little bit more than 70 now, all the way from 7 to 17, out here interacting. Some of them can even code. Some of them's built games in C++ and other things just coming up. Some of them going to be engineers and other things in the space. That's been massive. We're doing something I wish I could talk more about. Oh my God, this is like right up this alley, but a heavy NDA holds me back. But we're going to be doing something amazing, hopefully around the first of the year, or at least starting it with children. Give back. I'm trying to talk with Ledger. Trying to talk with some people to get them some free cold storage and some more education in that space, also from straight from the professionals. Uh, Oh man, that's something I'm really passionate about. My daughter's 8. She already codes. She runs 2 master nodes, while at the same time my mother is 61. She runs also 2 master nodes and has a validator that's on her computer for Harmony. So we got to get out here and educate. And I think the children, because what really pushed my mother to ever look at her first master node, which was a Divi node, which is just a one-click node, but was my daughter and my niece and nephew. My niece is a sophomore in high school. She interacts with DeFi platforms. She's done many things that is very amazing just from coming into the space, having a little bit of education and just really being intrigued by the space. I come into space since 2014, and I've preached this to my family and a lot of people that I've met almost every single day. And to me, what I've seen the children get a breakthrough, I don't know, it just brings a glisten in their eye. They might not do it at the first week or month. It even took my mom, oh, good Lord, probably over a year before she ever even considered it. And one big thing that I tied to it is how she thought, or how it was back in her day, that it was something that meant more than just a piece of paper. So think about it. We're going towards the future. There's going to be future there's going to be differences in the future that might change, as I know that at one point in time she collected gold and silver, and a lot of the people at that age still think that might come back at one time or another. You can think of that as digital gold and silver. That's how I first started talking to her. That's how I first, I guess, showed the kids. I got to show them some things that just what the last person was talking about, that the education system has failed, and they were teaching their child the very wrong things about banking and banking institutions. So I know me very passionately. Kyle Gordon thinks that it will come through the children, and some part be through gaming and education wise. So that was something that I really wanted to get out there. So that's a great conversation that I think is really going to change this space and time.
I think it's about empowering these kids too, big time. I know you're up here, and I know we want to get Rob and Shayne up here too. But one of the craziest things, my daughter personally has dealt with a lot of mental struggles probably for the past 3 or 4 years, and using a network like Hedera and HBAR, she was able to mint one of her NFTs, or mint one of her artworks that was surrounding, kind of around that mental health aspect. And some of you that are OGs in the Hedera space down here in the community probably remember the Lazy Superheroes auction house with Exact and all these other aspects. And the look on her face when she told her story and was able to, and I think it's Max Walker from the Hedera community that still has her NFT probably, or Max Williams or Max Walker. That auction, and we were watching it, and it was insane. I did not think that it was going to do as well as it did. I mean, personally, I love my daughter, but it was insane to see 6,000, 8,000 HBAR, and it happened in 8-10 hours. Just showing these kids the power of Web3 and what can really happen on these networks, I think, is an insane value proposition. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Aliens, ALINEZ, from the Hedera community 2 or 3 days ago. And he's a school teacher, Matt. And I know Matt Light that shines in the darkness down there, Matthew LNY, who brought up the educational initiatives, is also a school teacher. Aliens, the project founder, is a school teacher, and he was saying, I asked him, do you bring up any of your Web3 initiatives or your NFT aspects within your school, your teaching criteria? and he said, I guess he teaches 9th and 10th grade. He said that I at the beginning of every class, I spend 10 minutes with these kids, 9th and 10th graders, allowing them literally just give them a piece of paper, crayons, colored pencils, and allow them to create artwork and talk about, what's going on. And that's, I think, left the school system entirely because it's about just pushing people through. So huge initiative. I do want to let Big Time come up here because, my question for you, Big Time, is, and I know a little bit more about, your project than probably a lot of people here. Not affiliated or anything, but and super, super great that you guys come up. One of the things that you guys talk about all the time is building out real gaming experiences in a way that people want to play the game first, and then inject Web3 value on top of that. Can you give a little bit of insight as far as where you consider the digital economy going from a gaming perspective? Where do you think these things go in the future?
Well, I guess part of the reason why we launched what we did was we thought that ownership of assets and identity was the two biggest problems facing Web2 gamers right now. Like, if I had to kind of nail it down, I don't think it's just quality of gameplay. I think it's that you got to own your stuff and that your identity is like not truly yours. It's kind of married to a game and somewhat siloed in there. And so what we thought was to kind of have that universal digital identity, it needs to involve blockchain, but not compromise on the gameplay. So we tried to build a quality game. Otherwise, gamers aren't going to kind of stay in there, but then give you more ownership of the stuff that you find inside the asset. So it made sense for somebody in MMOs who seems to like value owning and like collecting items that it should be on the blockchain. I think that there's actually going to be a pretty strong pivot away from a lot of the play to earn games, and it's going to be more about that ownership and identity. I think a lot of games are latching onto that, and across the sector, I think making it more accessible and easy to use that stuff is where games are going in Web3.
100%. I definitely want to welcome up to the panel Shayne Higdon. If you're not aware, Shayne is the co-founder and CEO of the HBAR Foundation. How are you doing, Shayne? And it's a pleasure to talk to you one-on-one. I'm pretty sure I watched a video with the HBAR Foundation a year ago, and you guys were shout out to the contributors in this space. So I'm super humbled by that. But how are you doing today, Shayne?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic. I didn't say just shout out to the contributors. I named names, so people that I had been following for some time. And so I've certainly appreciated watching the community from afar and now being a part of it.
And I'm also bringing up Rob Allen. Rob is the Senior Vice President for Ecosystem Acceleration within the HBAR Foundation as well. Man, I have to say it's a pleasure to have both of you gentlemen up here. These spaces are, for me, they're about trying to break down these silos. We have two Ethereum game developers up here. We've got one developer on the XDC network that is certainly pulling his weight in spades within this space. We've got researchers up here, Tony, who does interviews. So it's a pleasure to have you up here as well, Rob.
Pleasure to be here. I'll let Shayne talk first then.
Yeah, so I had some questions that I definitely wanted to ask you guys. And for those that are down, since we kind of have this diverse crowd here, can you touch base a little bit, being that you guys are kind of, running ecosystem initiatives with the HBAR Foundation, can you talk about the overall goals within the HBAR Foundation?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, again, thank you for having Rob and I here, on this, very diverse crowd, and hopefully, we can give some knowledge around what's happening in the HBAR ecosystem and learn from some of the questions here as well. But, when we set out to create the foundation, HBAR had, and has best of breed technology and, speed, security, fairness, the governing council model. There's so many great aspects to it, carbon negative footprint. So it was really exciting. How do we begin building an ecosystem to incentivize builders, creators, dreamers, people that are on this call, people that are just, looking at the next phase of humanity and saying, how are we going to engage with our financial systems? How are we going to minimize our footprint personally and in our companies on the planet? How are we going to live in this digital world and be able to make money and be able to converse and be able to do various things? How are we going to bank the unbanked? There were just so many problems that I think, blockchain, distributed ledger technology, crypto try to solve. So for us, how did we harness those goals? And we really summarized them into three areas. One, we needed to grow awareness of the HBAR economy, right? Our mission was to incentivize creator dreamers, et cetera, to build on HBAR. but we needed to grow these. And a lot of folks knew who Hedera was, and maybe even still, if we're honest, maybe there are some that still don't know all about Hedera. And so we continue to wave that flag of awareness in every place that we possibly can. Places like this to be able to talk about it. Thank you for giving us a platform. Second is to accelerate access, and then in parentheses, and stickiness. And what I mean by that is when we wanted, to be able to give access to these developers, these entrepreneurs that are building next generation technologies and applications, whether you call them Web3 or other, we needed to accelerate that access both to HBAR to continue to secure this proof of stake network, but also the platform so that people can build these technologies on them. And so we had to fill in some gaps into the ecosystem. So we had to, build some of the dev tooling, and we're continuing to do that, partnering with the likes of Swirls Labs and others to be able to do that. The stickiness aspect is how are we solving, and how are the projects on our network solving real world use cases or real world problems in unique ways, whether these are old challenges solved in new ways or new challenges solved in new ways, something that folks will be able to use day in and day out. Today, I still believe that there is this, the user experience related to crypto still has a long way to go, in that in many ways, you still have to, if you're engaging with the DEX, you still have to be fairly technical to understand what's going on. We're going to see, I know we got the regulatory environment, we don't necessarily need to talk about that, but I know that, we're going to continue to see massive adoption as that user experience gets more seamless, more embedded into our daily lives. That's when we're going to continue to see or see massive amounts of adoption. The third area and final goal was to increase commerce. And we're seeing that. I mean, the NFT community has exploded on top of Hedera. We're seeing more and more tokenized assets. We're seeing DEXs, native DEXs being built. We've got one going live tomorrow in HeliSwap. So there's increasing commerce on the network, I think, is going to be key. And then lastly, those were the three main goals. We were measuring them by the number of accounts created, by TVL, which was, when we started the foundation, really wasn't a metric per se that anybody was tracking, even though, the likes of DeFi Llama were there. And then you had, transactions per second. Are we able to, sustain, a significant amount of transactions per second, on the network? So those were the goals that we set out, and we feel like we are beginning to achieve them.
Yeah, I guess the question that I would have, and I think one of the really interesting things being with the panel that we have up here right now, Shayne, is like you've got Big Time and Undead Blocks, both building out on Ethereum. And not to say that Ethereum isn't sustainable enough to facilitate those economies, but if there's problems that exist with, or if there's problems that they run into, is there a mechanism for them to reach out to the foundation and kind of provide data based on what they've built and try to integrate, maybe it's one of the Hedera tool sets, maybe it's HBAR into the ecosystem. Like, what does that look like for projects building in other ecosystems to be able to integrate HBAR on top of that?
Yeah, great question. Well, one of the technical aspects that, again, that we, i.e. as an ecosystem, in concert with Hedera, in concert with Swirls Labs, in concert with the foundation, was, EVM compatibility at the beginning of the year, along with our smart contract service. And so making it easier for, developers to take the projects and move. We've had a number from Ethereum, we've had a number from Solana that are starting to move to Hedera and having great experiences. It's not to say that everything's perfect, but we are certainly seeing more and more of those projects happening. I think if a project wants to say, hey, look, we want to be a multi-chain world, so we've started on Ethereum, but we want to build similar capabilities on Hedera. They can reach out, through our website. They can reach out to me, Shayne at hbar.fund. We want to cast a wide net. We honestly, more demand than we can probably address, as quickly as we would like to, just given the amount of activity that we have on the network once we launch the foundation. And so we try to prioritize those things as best we can. A wonderful project on Ethereum, that would like to move to a multi-chain world, would certainly get our attention, and we would focus on that. I think that does beg the question to kind of how we're structured. So, if there is an opportunity to talk about how we've structured our operations, which we've remain pretty conservative in our hiring processes, et cetera, I think that'll help shed some light on, who within the foundation, they can reach out to. Rob, I don't know if you have anything. Rob's on the forefront of, all of these accelerators and a lot of exciting stuff.
I'd love to ask Quincy, Undead Blocks, and Big Time right now. Quincy's starting out on XTC. Am I loud? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Quincy, Undead Blocks, Big Time. I guess for Big Time and Undead Blocks, have you guys looked into other ecosystems? Or Quincy, have you looked into potentially the bridges being built out for XTC as well?
Yeah, actually, that's like one of the biggest things that we're focusing on is maximizing the amount of bridges to the most amount of networks, primarily looking at EVM networks, but also non-EVM networks as well, mostly to be able to maximize liquidity in terms of assets on both networks and accessibility, but also have dApps and applications engage cross-network. So that's one of the really big things that's happening at XCC.
Yeah, most definitely at Undead and Wagyu Games, we've looked into the AVM. We've talked to quite a few, even talked to, just had a meeting actually with Harmony, just to talk there also to get brains. We've been talking to everybody in the space. We're all about being connected. We think that it'll make this space stronger. And we want to be able to facilitate that to people that might want to be on that chain and use that currency more than another. We know people have preferences. So we most definitely have been looking into it and talking to others.
I guess for us, because we kind of went for a layer 0 solution, we've talked with multiple chains. So we've done some stuff with Binance. We've done some stuff with ETH. I'm a little bit more personally tied in with Binance, and they're not just like on a technical development side, but they have a lot of other assets they've brought to the table, like their Binance Live thing. They have social media. They've obviously got some funds that they put at nascent projects. And it's interesting in that they operate not just as a currency, but like a lot of other blockchains, they are also like miniature VCs, which I think is extremely important for kind of establishing early dominance for them in a longer term. But that's why we try to have like multiple chains to see which one ultimately wins out in the next few years or 10 years. It gives us a little bit more flexibility.
Well, I mean, you guys have flexibility right now. I mean, give Shayne a follow and Rob a follow. I mean, both these guys are heavy hitters within the HBAR Foundation. And Rob, I didn't mean to step on any toes. I would love for you to extrapolate based on what Shayne had talked about. And then I definitely have some more questions for everybody. And 0-0 Monkey, I'm going to get you up after Rob.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, Shayne very eloquently laid out the landscape there. A couple of things on the technology that enables this interoperability. I think those of us who have been around the space that we now call Web3, and which is far less scary than talking to enterprise and kids and grandparents about crypto. The thing that we realized fairly early that there won't be one chain to rule them all, right? The interoperability is key. We've seen that in the past with the walled gardens that failed on the internet in the early days. We've seen it in terms of mobile payments, where the whole ecosystem scale when there are bridges and mechanisms for interoperability. And in Web3 and token economy space, that's about liquidity as well. It's not just the technical kind of blockchain agnostic platforms that we've seen developing. We need horizontal interoperability as well, so value flows between chains. And the Hedera ecosystem has been growing rapidly in the last year. I think we like to think that the foundation's had something to do with that and incentivizing in the right places. We've got DeFi, we've got a fantastic NFT community, many of whom are on the space here. So those things are growing and growing rapidly. And the reason they're growing rapidly is that the other layer 1 networks have I guess trailblazed in a lot of these areas. But Hedera, by its very kind of design, is cheaper and faster and fairer and more secure. So as we're all in really, really early stages of Web3, and the adoption of technology and the creation of tools and the ability for retail, user experiences that are not clunky and delightful to interact with. These are all developing fast, and we each new development, and Hedera has kind of taken the Hedera ecosystem, and the builders here have taken their lead from what works well on other chains, and then kind of added the secret sauce and kind of leverage that speed and security that we get with Hedera. But at the same time, the adoption of the EVM on Hedera has kind of been a real step change in function. We knew that Solidity developers and smart contract developers would need to be coaxed across from other chains, because you do get very embedded in the tool sets that you're familiar with. And so the first thing to do was to build an EVM, maintain the EVM. The one that we use is the Besu EVM from the Hyperledger project, and optimize it for Hedera. So anyone with smart contracts, Solidity smart contracts on EVM compatible chains can port that bytecode, exactly the same code, from their chain onto Hedera as well. So not only do you have this ability to migrate, but you also have this ability to interoperate. And the benefits of the Hedera EVM is that you can interact directly with the native services as well. So we've got a consensus service, which is for data integrity, for notarization, for any kind of verification of data that needs kind of third-party interaction. There were whole chains built in the early days specifically for that one use case, and now you can interact very, very cheaply with the Hedera consensus service and get it out of the box. And I've seen applications use that and interact with that and build on that in less than a day. And then the other service is the token service, so you can create tokens at a native level cheaply and easily, and then use your smart contract if you need it to kind of interact with those two services. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of encouraged the NFT community to form. Not only have we had a really strong Hedera community since the early days, been through thick and thin, and seen the burgeoning NFT kind of space grow rapidly over the last sort of 18 months or so. But then they know the tools are there for them to create their own NFTs. So it's been a real delight to see that part of the community really growing, because they can contribute, right? So they're not sort of hardcore technologists, but they're creators and dreamers and builders, and they wanted to contribute in their own way. So that's an amazing thing to see. And because NFTs can be created so cheaply and easily on Hedera, that's kind of encouraging NFT builders across some other chains as well.
I have to ask Tony. I have to ask Tony, have you ever interviewed Rob, Shayne, anybody from the HBAR Foundation or Hedera initiatives? Or, we've got Quincy up here as well. Ever interviewed anybody from XTC?
I have interviewed Mance Harmon, the co-founder of Hedera, and I'm amazed at the work you guys have done and the partnership, the enterprise partnerships. Blown away by that. I don't know, Shayne or Rob, if you can talk about, are those folks like Google, IBM, Boeing, and so forth integrating Hedera's tech into any of their native product suites and so forth?
Yeah, sure. So I actually sat on the governing council. One of my many journeyman kind of touch points with Hedera was taking FPOS onto the governing council. FPOS is the Australian debit card network. And so I've seen it from the inside, and it's not just a talking shop. It's not just partnerships that are meaningless. Every one of those governing council members has a 39th share in the Hedera network. And the reason for that is, we're a proof of stake network. You need to bootstrap these networks in a way which is safe and secure and in a controlled way. We believe Hedera will be part of the next generation of the internet, if not all of it. And you've got to do that in a kind of controlled and grown-up way. The original genesis of the internet was developed in much the same way. The likes of Cisco and Sun Systems and universities hosted all those computers that kind of formed the backbone of the Internet 1.0, and now we're looking, leaning into Web3 and the next generation of the internet, and the same thing's forming. So these organizations providing that first stage of hosting of the network, which then very soon will turn into community nodes and then ultimately into kind of fully decentralized network. But to answer your question, they are all contributing in one way or the other. Some of them very publicly, So the likes of DLA Piper, one of the world's biggest legal firms, has launched Toco, which is a security token platform. Avery Dennison, one of the world's largest logistics companies and producers of RFID tags, have launched Atma.io, which is soon to start ramping up some significant volume, which I believe only Hedera will be able to handle. So there'll be huge amounts of transactional data on the network very soon. Much of which is integrated with our ESG technology, the Guardian technology that hopefully I'll have time to talk about in a bit. You've got Standard Bank in Africa, which has publicly announced quite a few projects around CBDCs and stablecoins and identity, and they're very active. FPOS, my own former organization, ran micropayments and digital identity pilots, and is kind of doubling down in that space. So yeah, they're all contributing one way or the other. The other thing is that they actually collaborate together. So it's a space where Web3 is very experimental at the moment, and for enterprises it's quite scary. Because they've got their Web2 platforms, and they've got a significant investment in change to make. So they're not as agile, obviously, as startups and the degen end of the spectrum. But they know that there's a Web2 to Web3 transition underway, and they need to be part of it to stay relevant and stay in business. So being part of the governing council and the likes of Boeing and Standard Bank and DLA Piper would never get into a room together, probably, but under the with the governing council in place, they're able to, and they can ideate and run kind of use case workshops and find out what's relevant for them, or share notes on their own experimentation. So that all of that stuff is, I think, really positive for the wider Web3 community, because these businesses aren't going away, and they'll they're being proactive through the Hedera Governing Council in experimenting and building for both for the good of their businesses, but actually to contribute to the greater good too.
I would add to.
Yep, go ahead, Shayne. Sorry.
Yeah. Just no, it's okay. Just real quick, I would add. One that's been pretty public about their use case lately has been ServiceNow. ServiceNow, if you don't know them, they're an $85 billion market cap company. They do a lot related to digital transformation and back office processes, and they have become a council member and immediately began building. There's a lot of content about this on Hedera.com. You can go look at ServiceNow. They've got a lot of graphics, a lot of details, but they were focused on two use cases. One's trusted SLAs, service level agreements, between IT and their businesses. So oftentimes, you're an IT organization, and you're oftentimes delivering that service to various business units inside a company. And there's an element called a chargeback. So if you've used too many IT services, more than what was allocated to you, there needs to be a chargeback system. Prior to a solution that ServiceNow was doing, it was a very manual process and a bunch of tracking of data, et cetera, et cetera. And it can be, the data was fairly fungible and, had multiple systems of record, et cetera. And what ServiceNow is, we want one version of the truth. We believe that trusted SLAs is where it's going to be. And they built that on Hedera, along with focusing on e-procurement services, for their service chain, as an example. And then the last point I wanted to make is, as the foundation really, became focused on continuing to recruit new governing council members, Rob, myself, and others, we really focused on making sure that we can clearly articulate and help these very large enterprise multinational companies build use cases on the network. Every single council member just about is building a use case or several on the network as we speak. Some are more vocal than others. There's a lot of legal liability associated, or distinctive confidence, competitive differentiation. So they don't necessarily announce it until until they are ready, or until it's launched, which I know goes against the grain in many ways around transparency, for crypto. But it's exciting. It's exciting to watch these large organizations digitally transform and help their customers digitally transform using DLT as a base foundation.
I definitely want to get some more, because I know Creamies, you have your hand up, and 00 had the hand up earlier. But for Big Time and Undead, I think it's a massive opportunity right now to like maybe discuss like you guys are both launching on Ethereum. Not taking away from the value proposition because there's a ton of liquidity there. There is a massive network pool for user interaction or UX and UI user interface. As time moves on, like when we start seeing gamification really need to kind of have that, I don't TPS to me is kind of a figure that is just there. But when it comes down to like processing and efficiency, like would it be an opportunity for like Big Time or Undead Pixel or Undead Blocks to reach out and like maybe explore other aspects as you guys grow out the gaming ecosystem in a way that makes sense to you?
I think it does for us. Like, part of it is you have to kind of chase the needs of what your consumers want, and so like if at the end, if like down the line, whatever we kind of went with isn't working, we're obviously going to adjust to what does work, and what's going to be best for the players. So like we're absolutely open to it. We're open to a lot of things right now. We haven't, and that's part of the reason why like some of our roadmap stuff is open to modifications. Like we know generally where we want to go, but it's very player focused. But as certain things change, as the context changes, you gotta be able to adjust. So I think we're open to it.
Yeah, most definitely open. Already had the discussion with a few others, entertained the ideas. Most definitely something that we're going to talk more on, discuss as this ecosystem gets built out. And just like Big Time, whoever the community wants to see, really we'd like to facilitate to many, to where many people could come in and find us and they make their choice where they want to pick us up at. But I know we're definitely open for it.
Yeah, and I think the really cool thing when you start talking about Hedera is that there's multiple services that can be utilized. You've got the token service, the consensus service, the smart contract service. I'm sure that Shayne and Rob both know of potentially other aspects being built out for product line aspects, but maybe we'll hear about those down the road. But plug and play initiatives for more efficient.
Can I just interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Only because you just mentioned the smart contract service, the consensus service, the token service. I think even though this is really an important aspect, not a lot of folks know about it. So when you think about building a project or ultimately a business on top of Hedera, cost is absolutely paramount when you think about that. And so if you have fluctuating costs, gas fees, et cetera, it becomes very difficult for us. This is an interesting thing to think about. So for every Hedera consensus service, those transactions are denominated in US dollars at 1/1000th of a penny. If you use the Hedera token service, it's denominated at 1/10th of a penny. Those are fixed, US dollar denominated. So as you are thinking about users, transactions, building your business, number of trades, and whatever it is, you can look at that and say, hey, look, if we believe we're going to get this amount of demand for our game, for our widget, for whatever it is that you're doing, you have a pretty good idea as to how many HBAR you need in your account to pay for these API calls, and then ultimately, passing on that to users that are like, wow, this is an incredible ecosystem that I'm not going broke on, just ultimately trying to do what I love, whether it's NFTs, playing a game, or something more enterprise focused.
Yeah, I want to give an opportunity for Big Time and Undead. I have a ton of listeners to come up here. I hope that this space was able to facilitate some follows as far as like between different ecosystems, and then maybe some conversations being built out like over time, just in a way that makes sense. But yeah, Big Time and Undead, if you guys have anything, because I would hope that you guys listen, and I want to bring up the rest of the people requesting down here.
Can I also?
Yeah, Rob, go ahead.
I'll take a step back, but I'd like to have 5 minutes just to talk about our sustainability credentials and what we're doing in the ESG space as well before I leave.
I don't want you to leave, Rob. You and Shayne, I want you guys to stay up for a couple of seconds if possible.
That's all good. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there was.
No, you guys.
That's really important for us.
I hope you guys aren't going anywhere, but I did want to give Big Time and Undead the opportunity to speak before I let other listeners up, if that's possible. And then Rob and Shayne, I definitely want you guys up here still. Or Undead and Big Time, like I hope you guys want to participate more in these spaces and just try to grow out cross chain. Like, do you guys have anything that you guys want to talk about, or any big initiatives coming up soon that we should know about?
check out our beta testing for multiplayer that just dropped, and appreciate you having us. Most definitely would love to be here more. We'll be sitting down in the listener section listening as long as we possibly can. Support everybody that's here, and everything we've heard is very influential on how the space is going to be built out and building with others. We're very open, integrating with others, bringing more to the space to help it build out. More things that are smart and innovating are always cool for us. And just appreciate you having us and really giving us the time to be up here and just hearing about HBAR. I've known about HBAR. You guys over there are amazing and what you're building. Most definitely would love to have a conversation with you guys sometime.
Big time. Yeah, thank you so much, Undead Blocks. I really appreciate it, dude. Like, it's awesome to have, like I said, like breaking into like some of these Ethereum Twitter spaces is extremely difficult sometimes. And I did that, and you guys gave me a platform to speak, and I'm glad that you guys came up and spoke as well. And just fantastic to have you guys up here.
I just, sorry, Saul, I'm going to cut you off. I'm a creator on Hedera. I've been on Ethereum. I've been on Solana. I've been on a lot of chains, BSC, all the EVM chains. I came to Hedera and stayed here and started building here for a reason. HBAR Foundation, I see what they're doing. And everything they've been doing has just been amazing as far as a consumer standpoint and a creator standpoint. I do want to point out they do have HIPs, Hedera improvement proposals, that go out pretty frequently. They actively build out these things that they see that we need. The ecosystem is very young. They also help not just on the technical side, but on the, what they do with their grants and stuff. And they've been very fair. They've been very critical for the buildup of this. My experience is as a creator, a consumer on this blockchain, on this public ledger, what have you, on this crypto network has been amazing. And I do see why Solomon is so adamant about talking to you big time and Undead Blocks. And I do wish you do take the time and take this seriously, because I hear these big guys talking. I consider Shayne and Rob big guys, HBAR Foundation, right? And it all sounds the same. Oh, we're cheap, we're efficient, we're great at this, we're great at that. But there's validity there. And I'm speaking from my personal experience, from where I've been to where I am, and the reason why I'm here. Whether you take the leap or not, that's up to you. But I do ask that you do take it seriously and do your research.
It's insanely difficult to try to get other chains into discussions that are cross-chain.
It is, because it's a lot of friction.
It's insanely difficult.
I think, sorry, just to add on to that, I think a great project that's being built on Hedera that's good, that I would assume is more like-minded with Undead Blocks and big time, is Earthlings, who are building out a complete gaming / metaverse experience on Hedera. And you guys should reach out to them and figure out what made them choose it. Because to be very frank with you, our entire project, it's been built using HTS, and it's completely on the Hedera network. And it was just like what Shayne touched upon in terms of the cost, and having we have the ability to plan out our entire project from the start to cost wise, efficiency wise, everything. It was just perfect. And I know it sounds like kind of like a generic show, but it's the honest truth. It is a great network.
I definitely wanted to give big time an opportunity, because I definitely want to get more speakers up here big time. And you guys, you guys reached out to me a long time ago. I saw the game demo and I loved it. I'm just so busy in this space, but we've kept in contact, and I'm hoping that I gave you guys enough of a platform, even within a community that you're not nascently in. Like, if you want to say anything, like, before you hop down, I would love for you to. And hopefully we've made some connections in this space. And if you have anything interesting coming up, feel free to mention it. So.
For sure. Thank you very much for having us on here. I saw some familiar faces like you and Stacky, and there's some other high quality names in here. So again, thank you for having us on here. I guess for parting note for us is, like, Big Time is just kind of the first game out of our studios, and we've got several more coming out, including like one that we're launching next week. And so, like, when we find productive partners and platforms to build with, we're going to like continue it and expand it to like multiple games. And so I think that's important for us, like, especially as we think about transitioning or bringing in different chains, like who can provide the best user experience for the ultimate players that we end up working with is like by far the most important thing. So I'll kind of leave it on that one. Thank you very much. I know I've learned a lot in here. I'm going to keep listening as well. And I've followed several of the speakers in here as well. So thanks for having us on.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it, man. And thank you very much. I'm going to let some other speakers come up. Shayne and Rob. I know, Rob, you wanted to get into ESG. I think one of the questions that was like maybe extrapolate, through the ESG initiative, like from this question, but from the projects that you guys see currently building on Hedera and or projects that have currently received grants, which sector are the majority from? And which sector currently have shown the most growth for Hedera, and where do you see that growth going in the future? For people that don't know, the Hedera HBAR Foundation has a crypto economy fund, a metaverse fund, a sustainable impact fund, and a fintech fund. Where do you see the most traction right now, and where do you see it going? And then certainly explore the ESG initiatives, Rob, as well.
Well, I'll start out, and then I'll toss it to Rob because I'll set it up in a way that it makes it easy for him to kind of move into ESG. Right now, it's really across the board. So when we looked at, we got started in earnest at delivering grants, early this year, and so far we've delivered over $350 million of grants across almost 160 different projects. So we got to work. We really, really focused on doing this, and I look at it as someone earlier in the conversation mentioned, being a VC. We're a VC, but in a foundation's body. We manage our funds. We look at, returns to the network, if you will, in terms of, the various goals that I talked about initially. All the funds right now have been it's almost daily we're making some sort of grant to a given project. And we've got a formal process, we've got a grant committee, and we really do things by the book. But, when we think about making these grants, we look at the strength of the team. Have they had past successes or failures for that matter? Oftentimes, if they failed in a project and they understand why, it's better to put some money with them as a result of it because they've learned a lot, they've grown, they've been of a growth mindset. We look at the strength of the team. We look at the strength of the project. We look at the market size, right? And oftentimes in this space, market size it can be difficult to assess, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're giving grants that build an entire ecosystem. In some cases, we've given grants to multiple projects in a given area because we're not in the business of picking winners. We're in the business of building ecosystems, but the users pick the winners and decide who has the best technology. And so with that, I know that in the fund, the SIF fund, the Sustainable Impact Fund, we've made quite a few grants that I think are going to be game changing, in our planet. And, to that end, it's been a real focus for us. It continues to be a real focus for us. And I'll let Rob talk about why it's such a focus for us and what he and Wes have been doing in the space.
Yeah, thanks, Shayne. Just taking a step back, because Hedera isn't a blockchain, it's not kind of constrained by the sorts of things that constrain blockchains, and by design, it can scale without impacting security or the price that we've already talked about. And an aspect of that is its energy consumption. So the University College London, also a governing council member, did a very thorough study about a year ago on proof of stake distributed ledgers, and found that not only was Hedera the most energy efficient of all the proof of stake systems, including a post-merge Ethereum network, but it was by orders of magnitude. significantly less, and that's just down to the design and Dr. Lehman-Baird's genius. So we believe, and we have as Shayne said, Wes Geisenberger, who leads the Sustainable Impact Fund, and myself and a team around them who are passionate about the planet. Right? We believe that this is the best technology possible, because if you're building sustainable impact solutions, if you want to address the problems with carbon markets, if biodiversity or nature-related markets need to be addressed, you shouldn't be carrying a ton of carbon debt on your platform before you even start making an impact. It just makes no sense. The Hedera network actually offsets the small amount of energy that it does consume. So that helps us make the claim that we're carbon negative. But what we like to think about, in terms of our grant giving and our kind of wider perspective, because this is a unique differentiator, I believe, for the Hedera network, and that's why we're doubling down on this. And there's a very specific fund within the foundation for it, and we announced $100 million worth of fund to the SIF specifically. So there's nothing like that anywhere else in the Web3 ecosystem. So we like to think of us as bringing the balance sheet of the planet to a public ledger. What that actually means is that the planet that we all live on, obviously, is full of natural assets. Assets, not just things like carbon credits, but biodiversity and nature-related, which aren't don't have value attributed to them. And as we know, if we don't valorize or attribute value to things around us, then we don't value them. And then it leads to the tragedy of the common. It goes into a downward cycle. So we're seeking. I mean, it's a big vision. It's a grand vision, but it's something that we truly believe that we can make a difference to. And we're starting with carbon markets, and carbon markets is a very obvious, for those who know it, place to start, because it requires marketplace infrastructure. It has some form of value attributed to carbon credits and offsets. It's not a great system, but it's a system that we can make an impact on immediately. And it also affects things like nature-related markets and biodiversity and other aspects of ESG. And for those who don't know what ESG stands for, it's kind of the enterprise version of the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN set out, and it stands for environmental, social, and governance. So all businesses need to account for these non-financial risks in terms of ESG now. So it's big business. It needs to be done properly. So if you've got a network that you can create digital assets on and at huge scale and settle in real time in just a few seconds, then that's actually the best possible platform to recreate new types of marketplace.
I have to give a shout out to Pixelland, who came up, and I think Pixelland, there's a whitelist giveaway right now that we're facilitating within this. Do we have our winners for people that are still here listening?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we scooped them up, and the two winners right now, we've got James, or at HBAR NFTOG, and then also shout out HBAR Stevo187. I know Stevo's huge in the community, so shout out Stevo as well. We'll be reaching out to you guys.
Yeah, so Pixelland, are you guys going to handle kind of the messages, and I'll make sure I handle the transfers with the whitelist aspects?
Yeah, we can absolutely do that for you.
That'd be fantastic, guys, and thank you guys so much. Yeah, to give you guys a heads up, or at least Pixelland, talk a little bit about Numbskulls and what you guys are facilitating starting tomorrow morning with, dude, the pixel art the guys have with the skull aspects is insanely ridiculous to me. Like I told you guys before, I'm a huge fan of Halloween and stuff like that. So, yeah, talk about what's going on tomorrow real quick. And then, yeah.
No, I really appreciate that. Yeah, Old Bones here from Pixelland. I'm the pixel artist. I've been here in the HBAR community since last year, when we had basically a wallet, then no wallet, and been on the ride ever since. So I've been here a while, been enjoying it the whole time. So we are launching on Termoon tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Will be our whitelist drop, and then 8 p.m. Eastern will be our public mint. And we've got 1,888 skulls dropping, numbskulls dropping, and they're going to be 500 each. So our whole thing at Pixelland is we are just trying to be like take pixel art to like the nth degree. I mean, we want to have a whole ecosystem. We originally started out as HBARmery on the network and kind of rebranded just because we wanted to have an overall scope, right? I kind of have a wandering mind. I want to do things and be creative in a way where we can just kind of go nuts on it. And thankfully, I will say I'm really enjoying the talk about the technologies and everything. And I think I can bring a unique aspect and opinion here since I've been here for so long. When we first started, there was like no mint tools, right? Patches is up here as well. He created the first mint tools that we really were using on a mass scale. And, for our drop tomorrow, we've got we're launching on Turtle Moon Tools, which is Patches thing. I've got LedgerWorks. We're using a bot from them to track what's being minted. We're using a couple different bots from NFTer, and NFTer is also from another chain as well. They mint on ETH and came over and are using smart contracts and stuff like that. So I just want to say the ecosystem has grown so much since we first got here. And there's a ton of high-end developers and projects that are really empowering the creators like myself that, I don't come from a coding background, but what we can do is create and do things that are engaging with the community. And we're really empowered by a lot of the guys that are in the community that are the developers. You know what I mean? So we're really excited.
We had WietseWind down here as well. One of the legitimate, OG developers on the XRPL with some and all the aspects that he's facilitated. I invited you up to speak. If you want to come up to speak, great. The entire proposition of these spaces consistently is, it's not just about HBAR, it's not just about the XRPL. It's about trying to create as much utility as possible where people that are siloed into these ecosystems don't understand the value propositions going on within these ecosystems. And, Patches is building out on Hedera, all these community tool sets, and Viets is just one of those dudes that 100% has done that from the XRPL as well. And we do have Shayne and Rob up here from the HBAR Foundation, which are, really, really great value conduits to try to ask questions to and understand what's going on. So if anybody wants to ask a question, Rob and Shayne, do you guys mind if I get Jeff or Wolf up here for a second? And Viets, if you want to come up, dude, I'll send you the invite. I would love you to come up. If not, we'll keep hashing this out. We had some Ethereum projects on earlier. We just, we're trying to build this out and break down these silos as much as possible. So go ahead, Wolf, if you want to go.
Yes, thanks so much for having me up, King Solomon. And thanks so much for holding the spaces, first and foremost. I love them, and always some nice information. I actually had a question for the big time, but he went down. So since there is so much Hedera enthusiasts here, I can ask, is there possible to mint NFTs on Hedera now, since you have the Pixel Land? I see you are minting something.
Yeah, I mean, minting on Hedera has been available for, God, it's
9
been
months.
It's been a long time at this point, right? This is one of the reasons why I would love to if Viets would come up for us, because XLS 20 essentially represents the NFT minting standard within the XRP ledger, but XLS 24 represents metadata standards, and you've got Patches that came up to speak that is a great kind of conduit for value as far as what those metadata standards have looked like within Hedera, and even May from Hashpack and all the community builders. I think it's a fantastic discussion to have. So yes, the answer is yes. You can certainly mint NFTs.
Do you mind if I just expand on that a little bit?
Sure.
I wanted to come up and talk a little bit about the gaming section, but I was a little late. Hedera is in a huge renaissance where over the last 9 months, we've been working on the fundamental pillars that are needed for flourishing NFT and cryptocurrency economy. DeFi with Saucer Swap that had no front running because all the transactions are so fast, and there's innovation that's happening in these pillars now. I'm CEO of Turtleman Command Center, and we have a new product called HGraphIO, which enables very, very quick and speedy reading data off of the mainnet, which is really tailored towards things like metaverses or gaming, where you need to have a wealth of information coming from a mainnet. You record, movement on Hedera Consensus Service, 1,000th of a penny each record, and then you can pull that historical data extremely quickly with HGraphIO. And so the Hedera mainnet becomes an extremely versatile carbon negative platform where you can use it. Like Turtleman Launchpad, our NFT Launchpad, uses Hedera Consensus Service as a database. And I've moved 60% of our centralized databases on AWS over to records in HCS, saving $280 a month just on that alone. And so there's a lot of enabling that Hedera can do, not just as a layer one, which I've clearly decided is my layer one I want to build on, but also as a layer two for things like Sol or ETH or anyone, again, with these gaming infrastructures that require a lot of transactions very quickly. There's a lot of very mature tools on Hedera now that can facilitate use cases for other chains. And I think it's really looking into, and there is a free public Hedera REST API, which can definitely get you going. And then our vision is to take this HGraphIO API, and there's some news coming out in the next couple of weeks, but we're really focused on making it accessible to developers to play and learn for free, get in and understand the power of Hedera, and do very complex, even pub subs where I could ask the network, hey, send me an event with the receiver and the payer account ID anytime that an NFT goes from this wallet to that wallet and the receiving wallet has over 10,000 each. Like that, something that specific can be subscribed to, and right when it hits the mainnet, you'll get an event, which I think is just going to open up a wealth of possibilities for any developer on any chain to have an ability to write to mainnet, save it, very accessible to anyone to see because it's a public ledger, and then do and subscribe to events on that to quickly and easily engage in Web3 decentralized computing to give users the use case you're trying to provide them.
Thanks, Patches. I know we've got Jeff here Again, open invitation for anybody building out on the XRPL or building out in any other ecosystem besides, any ecosystem, period. Jeff, I want to get to your question, and then I definitely, we probably got a half hour left here. I've got a couple more questions for Shayne and Rob, certainly. But I would love to have some cross-chain discussions. If anybody wants to come up and facilitate those, that'd be fantastic. If not, Jeff, the floor is yours, and then we'll finish out with some questions. So.
Yeah, thanks for having me up, King Solomon. The space has been really good so far, and it's good to hear Shayne and Rob's and HBAR's mission. And what we're doing with Oxaviers is that we're trying to connect people to spread awareness and education for occupational health. And so as part of like the ESG part of it, have you really looked into the aspect of, or the part of occupational health? It's a pretty big problem. A lot of people don't know about it, which is why we're creating NFTs to spread that awareness. But throughout the world, there's about 2.4 million deaths that occur with work-related illnesses. And a lot of people don't know about it. It's actually pretty costly as well. It's a $1 trillion cost globally. And so we have the NFTs to start that, to build that community. And the discussion you had earlier about how do you get more people involved, we're trying to approach an industry or the workers that work out in the field. They don't know anything about crypto. So having NFTs to get them started and to spread that awareness and education, but also provide like services or products to help, keep them safe, I think brings in the passion part of it. And so we want to be able to, relay to them that there's somebody like Oxaviers, and we'll bring in other contributors and consultants that can help connect with them if they have any concerns. A lot of companies, I've worked for some major companies across the world, and there's still challenges. There are ecosystems that are out there, but they're on Web 2.0. Web 3 brings benefits, and the DOT especially, and I know some medical applications are being built on Hedera, but it goes in line with what we're trying to do for health exposure data, is to have that confidentiality and be able to have it, on the DOT, where you can remove some of that confidential information, but share the most important information, like the objective data, like what they're exposed to. We have another project called TerraChain that we're working on that's being built on Hedera as well. And basically what we're doing is creating a protocol to help guide users on how to characterize chemicals, noise, radiation, all the health hazards. But TerraChain will allow employees to keep track of their own employee records. There's a lot of worker compensation cases that get denied because the data is not there, to where the individuals don't know what they're exposed to, even though the companies have the right to do that, or they're supposed to do it per OSHA regulations or occupational safety and health regulations. It's a challenge because there's not very many people that do what we do.
I have to give a gigantic shout out real quick, Jeff. Wietz came up, and if you're not aware, WietseWind is essentially the dude that has literally built out wallet functionality on the XRPL and what everybody utilizes. So this is what these spaces are all about, 100% creating cross-chain synergy, breaking down these silos. So Wietz, dude, thank you so much for coming up and speaking for a second. I guess a question that I would have for you, and I know from looking through the Twitter and just, following you for so long, that there's pros and cons aspects within XLS20 and NFTs and stuff like that. But, as far as what we're built out right now, wallet functionality, how important will this be moving forward within NFT standards on the XRP ledger, and where does it go to? And this is kind of I'd really love to see you and Patches have a discussion, because Patches builds so much more from a metadata standard standpoint, which XLS24 essentially represents, and then we have XLS30 on the back end. Where is the XRP ledger right now? And I'm just talking about NFTs versus, where does it need to get to in the future for really mass consumption with NFTs from a UX and UI standpoint, I guess is the question that I have, Wietz. And thank you so much again, though, dude, for coming up.
Of course, thanks for having me and just listening in while coding some stuff until I heard my name. So I am not too much involved in the NFT space, but I do know what's happening in the XRPL space. And one of the things happening in the XRPL space at the moment is, of course, a native NFT amendment implementation to become part of the core XRP ledger technology, which is, for those not really familiar with the XRPL space, but familiar with how things work on ETH and other EVM compatible chains, Features on the XRPL aren't implemented through smart contracts, or at least not today. They're implemented natively and become part of the native API of the XRP ledger. And so it requires this entire amendment, which has to be voted in with over 80% majority votes by the validators. And we're close for that to happen. While we're close to launching native NFTs on the XRPL, I would say a census, a standard for metadata on the XRPL, or a reference to metadata living externally. Any of those standards, there are discussions, but they're not wrapped up yet, which is a shame, by the way, because we had a lot of time as a community for that to be built, decided on before XLS 20, the NFT amendment would be launched or would have a shot at going live. So I guess that's pretty late. So what's going to happen now is that the technology will probably go live in a couple of weeks without proper standards, meaning some development teams will do something that looks like what the standard will be in the future, but it may not fully be, or developers may build something completely different, and it's going to be quite hard, especially at the beginning, for developers building on this technology to display what, for example, has been minted in other tools. So it's going to be pretty tricky to build a really great user experience without the standard being completed for metadata. So this is the reason we have. I mean, I'm the founder of XRPL Labs. Our flagship product is Sum. It's, I would say, the non-custodial wallet in the XRPL ecosystem. This resulted in us making the decision to not yet natively implement NFT displaying support in Sum, and this can still be added through what we call X apps. They're mini web apps, D apps, available for all users straight from the Sum wallet interface. But that's not a native panel with all your owned NFTs, because that requires to show, for example, a picture, a thumbnail, a title, stuff like that. And as long as there's no standard, as long as the entire ecosystem didn't agree on a standard, I don't feel comfortable adding something, because I think at that point, showing nothing is even better than showing weird or missing components. So I think then it's the responsibility of the developers, the platforms who are doing the actual minting, to also provide one of those embedded web apps to display what they minted in a really nice way. And then hopefully over time, next couple of months, the ecosystem will decide on standards, at which point we will add it natively to Sum.
I know Shayne hopped down, Rob. I still certainly want you here, and I really appreciate the time. And I'm trying to create as much synergy across these chains as possible. And having Viets hop up right now and talking about one of the problems that I know Patches was trying to facilitate solution, and I know that May from Hashback essentially really kind of took the bull by the horns with the Hedera community and tried to introduce a metadata standard. I think these are really important conversations to have. And creating synergy between developers that are really trying to build out and create as much value within these ecosystems is really important. Rob, is your time still okay? Do we have 20 more minutes or so, or?
I've got about 10 minutes.
Okay. Do you want to lead us out with the ESG stuff, and then I would love for Patches and Viets to speak for a second, and please give Shayne my regards. Honestly, I'm trying to create, like I said, break down as many silos as possible.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Why don't I take any questions on ESG rather than kind of carrying on, because I can talk for another hour more on the subject. So I'll listen rather than talk, which is always the best way.
That's fair. I'm sorry, I also got to head out. I just wanted to do a really quick rebuttal to the metadata standards. We didn't have any on Hedera for a long time, but the biggest projects got together and kind of agreed on a standard, and so the minting tools that were built had 85% of what we ended up using. And so there was usability before that standard was set. So admirable that you guys want to have it out at the same time. It's not detrimental, I don't think, because that's what happened on Hedera. And if you can get the project leaders that are creating the minting tools to agree to, attributes, properties, name, creator, ID, something that's simple, then I think you're not going to have as many problems. But you just need to make sure, how does the image put in, what attributes and properties, and then you can define it more. But I'm going to head out. I appreciate you bringing me up here, Generation Infinity, and it's been great talking and hearing everyone speak.
Yeah, Pat, just give Vietz a follow. I think you guys would have some really interesting discussions. We're all going to head out as well, but I do want to let Rob lead us out. And the last question that I would have is, with the world economy in turmoil, is the foundation taking any new steps to position itself as, best as possible for this situation that's occurring right now?
Wow, that's a great question to lead out on. I mean, as Shayne said earlier, we behave a lot like a VC. The diligence of the gift that we've been given from the governing council in terms of the grant and how we distribute that has to be done with the most kind of diligence and the best use of that those tokens, because ultimately it impacts price, right? And I don't see price being the be all and end all, but it's actually part of the security of a proof of stake system, right? The higher the value of the token, the more widely distributed it is, the more secure the system is. And we believe we've got some time to do that and get it right, and the price will follow. In terms of the world economy, we're those of us who've been around a while. This is my third crypto cycle. We're deep in a crypto winter. I believe that we'll come out, pretty soon. We've got converging black swan events, which are kind of creating all sorts of uncertainty in the market. So, no one's going to bet on when that next bull cycle will start. But every single cycle that I've been through, the froth and garbage projects and poorly thought through tokenomics and are boiled away, right? They disappear, they drop off the edge, and the quality projects that have strong network fundamentals and hardcore communities are the ones that win through. And I truly believe that firstly, Hedera is one of those, and secondly, the bridges that we're building to other very strong networks will actually set up the foundation for that next bull run. And not just a bull run in terms of price, but building, the building that is being done now during the winter will set us up for a very strong foundation for the Web3. This is a long-term vision, and we can bear a few peaks and troughs. But let's hope that the black swan events actually die down a bit, because they're getting a bit boring now.
Yeah, I want to give every panelist up here the opportunity to send us off real quick. So if you have anything that you would like to talk about, for 30 seconds though.
I actually wanted to mention our next show. It's actually a very interesting topic. I have pinned it at the top there, but it will be discussing digital identities in Web3. So we're going to have a big speaker lineup. I think there's some great concepts in there. So please do check out the space schedule that we will be putting out. But loads of cool information.
Thanks, Sadaf. HBAR Foundation. And Brandon, I know that you did not get a chance to talk today, but you said you were going to stick through the entire thing. You're a wild animal. Brandon, if you have anything to say before, and I definitely want to get to Vietz and everybody else here, but Brandon, if you want to talk and lead us out, that'd be great.
No, not too much from my side. I'm not speaking for the HBAR Foundation right now. I'm putting on my HBAR bull hat, but
yep.
Along the lines of what you were talking about, of all the turmoil we see, I believe in choice of money, and if we have a platform like Hedera and its core asset, which I won't even mention right now, and we have Fortune 500s and sovereigns, governments building on top of this application, that core asset becomes that other choice in money. And that's one of the things that really attracted me to the space. So, that gives us that choice of money. That's pretty much all I got.
Vietz, and again, dude, I know that your name was being mentioned, and I apologize for that, and I got you up here. But dude, honestly, it's an honor to have you up here, and your insight is invaluable to me because you're an actual builder in this space. So if you want to say anything about where we might be at or where we might be going, or what you guys are facilitating right now, that would be fantastic.
No need to apologize at all. I was there anyway. Like I said, background listening. So you asked what we're working on right now?
Yeah, I mean, just anything with what you want to lead kind of a value statement out with, maybe a heartstring type pool type aspect, or what what you guys are doing with some it would be great.
hard to come up with something on the spot in the middle of code. I'm very bad at multitasking, which
just tell us what you're most bullish on in the space.
Ooh, that's not going to be what I'm most bullish on. That's what I think is one of the most important things to tackle for the next couple of years.
Yep.
Which is the integration with the with traditional finance, with the world. There's so much in motion. If you look in the US, which is a huge user base, with the SEC doing all kinds of things. If you look here in Europe with MiCA, entire new framework and rules and regulations coming up to be rolled out to all European countries.
And that just got approved, by the way. I think.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course there are going to be amendments, and then it has to be implemented, and all the different member states in the European Union are going to do their own thing. But it's going to be good in the way that things become standardized and clear over time. But at the same time, it's something the entire industry will have to deal with. And in the meantime, for people to be able to really onboard into the crypto space, and for crypto to become a replacement of traditional solutions in the world around us, it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be very tricky, and we, as an entire industry, we need to deal with this very carefully and very well, because otherwise we're still going to be this 5 or 10% blockchain geeks doing our blockchain things without my mother, my grandmother, my neighbors actually taking advantage of all the new features and possibilities. And I think if you look at how that's being implemented today, I don't really like where it's going, but I also understand that this is the phase where we're in right now. If you look at, for example, crypto payments and on and off ramp, you see that somewhat centralizes again to, for example, the big custodians, the big, let's say, crypto payment service providers. And they're adding fees, and then you get e-commerce and brick and mortar stores, and they implement crypto payments through the platforms of these custodians, and then they add a couple of percent mark on the exchange fee, so they can do a revenue share with e-commerce, et cetera, That's not why we started this. That's not more efficient than what we're doing today with credit cards.
It's reinventing the same shit that already exists.
Exactly, and that's what we're doing right now. We're in the middle of that, and we're celebrating it as innovation. It isn't innovation. It's a phase we have to go through, and I think it's really important that we don't lose track of why we're doing this, where we want to go, the importance of non-custodial solutions and implementing those as well in retail use cases and in on and off ramp environments, et cetera. And that's going to be pretty tricky, because usually the non-custodial parties are, again, not the one adding the big fees and making money of that. Those few big companies are the ones doing that, and they're custodians, which isn't necessarily bad. But if we keep on celebrating that, I think over time we're back where we started, but then on a different rails.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you mentioned, this is all happening in the background, and we're aware of that. But I think where we're at with the greater population is very similar to where we were back when we were implementing something as simple as chip technology for tap and go. I do remember, I spent quite a long time in traditional finance, and we were working on so much in the background in terms of testing and doing pilots, and people were so unaware of it, but it was coming, and they were all hesitant, but now it's just been completely adopted. And I really think that's where we're at with all of this.
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, it makes perfect sense that everything that's being developed today, not even the financial side where fees are required for a company to grow, to obtain licenses, to do all the legal groundwork, et cetera. But also, if you look at non-custodial solutions today, it's not suited for the majority of the people. Key management solutions are still really, really bad. You cannot expect to onboard more people than we are already catering in this current ecosystem if you have to explain them that if they lose 24 words, they lose access to their savings or to their collections or whatever they own on blockchain, or even their identity. That's impossible. You cannot sell that. You cannot use that. So one of the things we are focused on for the next couple of years, this is a multi-year project, and many other teams are as well, is good and simple, but also cheap key management for the average Joe. And key recovery as well. Think about solutions where you have social key recovery with people, like physical people around you, or where you have timers on your account where if you don't touch your account for 2 years, maybe something happened to you, then maybe there's a way, for example, for a notary and your family to claim your funds. I mean, maybe something bad happened.
Do you think Vise, that a lot of that surrounds itself around like quantum resistance and zero knowledge proofs, like really simplistic ways to prove based on one thing that I'm myself, and that my family can prove that that they can justify I'm myself if something happens to me? Like,
I think this is all fairly easy with very simple smart contracts, actually, because what it all comes down to is simple logic, a rule, and then probably some kind of multi-signing. So we can do most of that, if not all, today. We just have to come up with something that actually works in real life, and hopefully people from the legal space, notaries, all of those people will be willing in their own jurisdictions, right? Because there's also a geographical component here. Will work with crypto and blockchain and blockchain identity and account management, key management projects to pilot this, and because some of their job will one day probably be blockchain related. So they might as well get on board right now and work with the existing industry to share the knowledge they already have. I mean, again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We got to work with the people who have expertise in their own field. So more things to do.
Well, thank you so much, Vise. Like dude, I can say for myself, I respect you 1,000,000% what you facilitated. And even within the NFT aspect, like within the wallet aspect, you've probably had so much blood, sweat, and tears to build out some over the past, few 3, 4, whatever years. It doesn't make sense to necessarily implement a standard unless there's a standard, right? And just kudos to you, dude, because I think a lot of the XRPL community depends on the application that you out to facilitate what they want to interact with within the ledger. And you to come up and speak, bro. As always, I've taught you. This is like the second time now. It's information, it's education, and it allows me to like learn a little bit more as well. So, Creamies, I definitely wanted to I've got Creamies, Death Ranger, Jeff, and Wolf. Creamies, go ahead if you guys want to lead us out. We've got 5 minutes left, so maybe a minute for everybody. So.
Yeah, thank you, Genfinity, and thank you, man, for inviting us over with a great panel of speakers. There was some very highly intelligent conversations going on. Just wish I could contribute a little bit here and there, but no, it was fantastic to hear what everyone had to say and just to absorb all the immense knowledge in here. But yeah, speaking for just Creamies, we have an upcoming Lance project coming out shortly, later this month, and it's going to be huge. We're collaborating with a bunch of our different NFT projects, and not only NFT projects, but as well wallet providers and domain names, which have just recently entered the Hedera space. And yeah, we're super excited for it, and we can't wait to show it all to everyone.
If you want to pin it, that'd be fantastic. That way that everybody can learn about it. Death, if you have something to say, bro, 100%, the floor is yours, dude.
I just wanted to say thank you for letting me up earlier, and you and Sadaf, you guys are doing a great job. These spaces have so far been filled with influential people and influential information, and just overall great space. So I thank you for hosting them.
Yeah, dude, it's difficult to do things under the purview of non-hype because there's no token NFT or coin, yet.
Yep.
At some point we can build out a community and justify doing that. Fuck, 1,000%. But right now it's just about creating cross-chain ecosystems and community and education and trying to get as many people to learn about as many different ecosystems as possible, where it's not just about the XRPL, it's not just about Hedera, it's not just about Ethereum, it's about bringing all these people up. Because when you start talking to these contributors that are really trying to build in this space, and this will be my ending of this, and then I'll give the other couple people here a second. you start to realize that everybody's really trying to do the same thing. And unless you're putting the time in to try to facilitate, knowledge or whatever it is in the space, and I know it's difficult. We're all going through our own stuff. We're all going through a bear market. It's not easy, but I think it's worthwhile doing. And having Shayne and Rob up from the foundation was fantastic. Having the XX network come up today was fantastic. Having Viets come up was fantastic. Like, this is what this space really is about, building out network of network type aspects, because if one chain or one ecosystem is having an issue, other ecosystems might have, maybe ways to bootstrap out to solve problems quicker. Or maybe not, but who knows? I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm going to let the Hedera Hashgraph guide come up if you want to say anything, and then Jeff and Wolf. We'll end it with you, Wolf, but Hedera Hashgraph guide, and then Jeff, and then Wolf, and then we're going to end it.
Yeah, hey there. Thanks for having me up. I just had a question for Wiets, actually, with respect to sort of the account recovery and management systems that you're working on, because I know that Hedera and Dr. Lehman Baird are also working on some open source standards, a platform called Direct, that they're looking to sort of be able to offer to the entire crypto ecosystem. And I think, if that's something that's being worked over on, the XRPL, absolutely, I would imagine collaboration would be something that would be welcomed.
Completely agree. If there's a link, there's a project. Let me.
We can get you in touch.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I'll connect with you after.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
We can certainly facilitate that as well.
See, I mean, this is what it's all about, guys. I mean, this is crazy, like, to have people coming up from different ecosystems. Jeff and Wolf, I'm going to leave it off with you guys. You guys can lead us out, man.
Yeah, thank you, King. I apologize for rambling on earlier, but I'm pretty passionate about what we do. But yeah, as far as I think DLT and blockchain has, the ability to really create a lot of utility that we haven't seen in the past and give the ownership back to those who, that own the information, right? That's what it's about. And I think once we have more regulatory clarity that comes, I think it'd be easier for these ecosystems to be built out. Because like right now, we've been doing a lot of research trying to figure all this out. And it's pretty hard to launch something if that clarity is not there. I know there's a lot of ecosystems and projects that are gun shy, for actually, just even trying to start. So I think once we get that clarity, it'd be a lot better. But I mean, we're still continuing to build based on what we know, and we're gonna keep on moving forward.
Wolf, the floor is yours, bro.
Thanks so much. And thanks to Wiets for coming and speaking today also. I love what you guys do at the XRPL Labs, and I have been a huge fan of the Zoom wallet for a long time now, and I can't wait till we have some more use cases with the XLS20 and things like that up and running in the Pro. So yeah, thanks Wiets to come and speak a little about it today. And thanks again, King Solomon, for holding these spaces today. It's always a pleasure, guys. So,
yep, I'm going to end it out here. I really appreciate everybody's time and energy. Hold on, my son's yelling at me right now. I appreciate everybody's time and energy coming into the space. Cross-chain collaboration, ecosystem building is fantastic. Hearing everybody's viewpoints are very, very similar. There's a lot of synergy between these different projects and community builders. This stuff all takes time. I'm hoping that these discussions, enable people to learn a little bit about what's going on in this space. And, for Viets up here, for Sadaf up here, for the HBAR Foundation, for Shayne and Rob that came on, for the XX Network, for every speaker that we had up here today, this is not being done in a way under the purview of any sort of an incentivized thing. I mean, we're just doing this stuff right now. And yeah, I appreciate all you guys for coming onto these spaces. So, getting our voices heard is certainly important. So thank you all. Thank you to everybody. So
great space, Element and Sadaf. Not everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Sadaf. Not everybody.
Thanks, guys.